to the iGeeksBlog show, an Apple exclusive podcast where we talk about teeny tiny, every possible information about the Apple ecosystem. I'm your host, Harshanki, and today we have for you guys a very, very, very special episode because this is the second episode of Women in Tech. And let's welcome our guest for the day, Paroma Chakravarty, podcaster, producer, and a speaker herself. Hi, Paroma. How are you doing today?
Hi, Harshanki. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast.
It's our pleasure to have you on stage. What a lovely energy. I love the energy that you have. And coming from a multitasking background, I know you have a lot going on your plate. So thank you so much for giving us the time and joining us for Women in Tech today.
Absolutely. I loved the first episode in this series. And I'm really honored that you thought I was worthy of being the second episode. This is so great.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little about your work. Why don't you tell us a little about your journey? But before that, I would want our audience to know that Paroma's podcast, and do you want to take the name, Paroma?
Dramas Over Flowers. It's a Korean drama podcast.
Awesome. Is ranking number 1 in Apple Podcast. Congratulations for that, Paroma. Let's talk about that first.
Thank you. It's we have been ranking in the top 10s for basically all of 2020. This is in the TV reviews category and often in the TV and films category. But yeah, 2 weeks ago, I went off on a holiday and didn't think to check our ranking. Then I came back and I saw that we had ranked number 1. So an entire week had gone back and none of us knew.
I know it feels bad, but then you have been trending for more than a week. That is pretty incredible, right? Because of the podcasting scenarios, one time you're in the top 10 and then the next week you're not even in the top 20s. It can be a little odd, right?
Absolutely. It just goes up and down. So this was the discussion I had with my co-hosts a while back that we are not going to be fixated on the ranking. The only reason we even check in, honestly, the only reason I check in is because I'm a producer and it's like an occupational hazard.
Right.
I need to know the ranking because this is the kind of stuff that you need to know about your podcast. It's
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the only reason. Otherwise, none of us really fixate on, hey, we were in the top 50s in South Korea where, it's K-drama. So if you're ranking in South Korea, that's like a big ass deal because this is an English language podcast. But then we're like, oh, we were in the top 50s in South Korea. That's so great. But that's relevant only because of the country. But aside from that, we try not to fixate.
I can totally understand. So what makes you do a Korean drama podcast? Are you guys huge K-drama watchers? I am so sorry. What's the term that you call it?
That's exactly correct. K-dramas. K-drama watchers is fine. K-drama fans, viewers. So I have been watching K-dramas for 10 years. And my friends and I are all writers. They're more serious writers than I am. I used to be a copywriter before I transitioned into working in podcast production. So the three of us used to write, it was paid work. We used to write for this international site that would cover Korean dramas, it was Drama Beans.
Okay.
And that's how we bonded and decided to start our own podcast, wanted our own voice in there, especially because there was very little South Asian perspective in there. And all three of us are South Asians, but we are based in different parts of the world. I'm in India, my co-hosts are in UK and the US. So we thought it was not just South Asian, but it was also the diaspora South Asian. So it's pretty great. So that's how we kind of got it started. And we didn't actually expect much because the international audience was kind of small. But in the last 2 to 3 years, of course, there's been an explosion of viewership thanks to Netflix. Our audience kind of exploded simultaneously. It's been fun.
That's amazing. So I would like to ask you that, a lot of podcasts these days are going exclusive to the respective platforms. We hear a lot of Spotify exclusive podcasts and a couple of Apple podcast exclusive podcasts. Where do you see your podcast going in the future? Do you want to be exclusive?
No, we absolutely don't. We have thought about it. There have been certain discussions, we've had people reach out to us, but we know very well that the way the international fandom is spread out, if we become exclusive to one platform, we're going to be cutting off a good chunk of our listenership. While I would say about 60% of our listeners are on Apple, there is like that 40%, this is relatively new. It used to be something like an 80% Apple listenership and a 20% Android. Right. But now it's like a 40% is a huge chunk. And that's mostly happening because of like a Southeast Asian interest in the podcast, as well as South Asian. And I don't want to cut off that part of my listenership. I'm like really happy, like when Indian fans reach out to us. I mean, fans of K-drama podcasts. I'm not presuming that we have fans, but like when they email us or leave us comments and they're like so delighted to hear our voice, that is a totally different experience than when we have like American listeners or UK listeners reaching out to us. That's amazing, but it's something else when someone reaches out to you and is like, you're representing us directly. Yeah.
Right. It's a huge feeling, right? I mean, I remember the days where we got our first Instagram DM or an email just appreciating for putting in all the efforts, and it feels that it's worth it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, righty. So you're also handling the production, right? Wow, you have a lot of hats that you're wearing lately. Tell us a little about your production career.
Sure. So I started my own podcast in 2017, and I was the primary producer back then because my co-host really didn't have a lot of interest in podcasts. They just wanted to do something together. Okay. And over time, of course, our like weight for my own podcast has like the weight of the labor has been distributed properly. They have come on board as producers, and we have like our distinct jobs. So that in and of itself, that's worked out really well. Right. But for my own podcasting business, I started working as a freelance editor in 2018. I started it as a side gig because but I was good at editing and nobody else was doing it. And a few people reached out to me and were like, could you edit our podcast? I was like, sure. Will you pay me? They're like, yes. You know?
Thanks.
So I was like, that's cool. Let me start doing that. And then I started getting good at it because I was taking on a lot of work and I was like, why not turn this into a regular business? Can I make this full time? I gave myself about a year to figure that out, and it happened before that. I went full time by the end of 2018, actually.
That's amazing. We're going to pause for a moment and really applaud this moment right here. I mean, living your dream life, doing what you love, and making it a full time profession in less than a year is commendable. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it mostly happened because I was talking about podcasts like everywhere. I used to be on Facebook a lot back then, and the Facebook groups were starting to open up. Like a lot of new podcasting groups were opening up, and I was constantly talking about podcasts. Like, you can do this, you can go to this hosting site. Oh, but don't use that website because it doesn't use this plugin. And I'm constantly talking about it. And when you're constantly talking about the thing that you love online, people find you.
Absolutely.
And people like reach out to you and are like, hey, are you interested in doing this thing? Because we think you know stuff. And that's honestly how I got most of my early clients.
That's amazing. Yeah. So 2018, it's been 3 years since you've been in the production. But let's talk about the things that are involved in producing a podcast or being in the audio production industry, because it just doesn't involve editing and getting the episode live. It has a lot more things than that. Let's educate our audience a little about that.
Absolutely. Well, it starts from pre-production, of course, which is not something I was initially involved in. But then I found that a lot of my clients didn't have a very good idea about podcast setups, the kind of mics they should be using, the software they should be using, basic things like always wear headphones because you don't want your laptop's, speakers to get recorded through your microphone. That creates this horrible bleed. So just small technical details that I organically got sucked into pre-production work. And then I was like, well, I already know how to launch a podcast. I just helped me do that. So that was a service that I added. So basically I got involved in a lot of the pre-production. And then I also started working as a podcast. So there are different aspects to producing a podcast. There's a pre-production, there is editing, and then there is the work of the post-production work that is more about distribution and promotion. Now, I don't do distribution promotion. I used to for a period of time. Then I realized I really don't enjoy this aspect of the work. I am a girl who really likes like the technical stuff. I like going in there and troubleshooting. So I backtracked and I'm like, I'm good at the production. I will stick to being a producer, and I will help my clients find their podcast managers. So I kind of work that way, like I stick to production. But yeah, I mean, when you're starting a my dog.
Oh,
Can
so
you
you
hear
have
my
a
dog,
cat?
by the way?
Yeah, you have a cat and a dog both.
Oh, I have three cats and I have two dogs. Currently, I also have a guest dog. If you see this one
it's
right here.
there. How adorable.
So he's a guest. He's just
Uh-huh.
decided that he wants to stay in my office right now because it's cold outside.
Dude, you are living the dream life, yeah? Living with dogs and cats and just awesome. I mean, I just forgot that we're still recording. Please go on.
Sure. I feel like I'm living my dream life. When I was working as a copywriter, it used to be like I'm good at writing, but it's not something that I enjoy doing for other people. In that, like my creative process needs to be for myself, and I'm in a position to do that now. I'm in a position to help other people like create their podcast because what they lack in technical knowledge, I know. So I can help them do that, and I can tell them what's possible and what's not possible in terms of like what format should your podcast be in, how should your intro outro work. It's not a simple matter of just adding in some music and recording an audio. If you want a good quality podcast, you have to understand the beats of how to create a podcast. So yeah, I mean, slowly I realized how much potential there was, how much work goes into production. Because honestly, when I had started off initially, I thought it was a DIY space. I thought you could read like a blog post on how to start a podcast and start a podcast. But please never listen to the first 2 years of my podcast because the audio is terrible.
I can relate to that on certain levels. And it's not that easy, right? I mean, people just... Okay, the easier part would be that you have to go out there and start. But as long as you don't start it, you're not going to learn any of it. So, I mean, take her advice, maybe hire her. She's amazingly good at what she's doing. And yeah, that's that. Okay, so we'll talk about your speaking opportunities. You have spoken at quite a lot of fests and you've also done a lot of good works. You're motivating dozens and dozens would be an understatement. You're motivating thousands and thousands of people out there. Let's talk a little about that.
Okay. So we all know what the pandemic did to conferences worldwide. They pretty much shut down like in-person stuff. What ended up happening was a lot of conferences that I, sitting in India, wouldn't have had access to, suddenly went online, and they were actively looking for speakers that were not just based out of the US. And like I said, because I am vocal and present in like all of these groups, well, so here's that I don't want to digress. I'll come back to that later. Okay. So because I'm so present and vocal in all of these groups, I knew when these opportunities came up, and I was the one applying, and then once I spoke at I think it was Podcast Global that I spoke at first in 2019, and once I did that, people knew my face. I got quite a few clients right out of that conference. Okay. I mean, I got a few client calls, and after that, I finalized a few of the clients. But my point is, this is the kind of exposure you need to give yourself if you want to work with international clients, if you want people to find you. And after I did a couple of them, I started getting invitations for speaking gigs. I'm assuming that I'm not a terrible speaker. People didn't think I was awful. So yeah, I got those invitations. That was a lot of fun. But I think more than because it wasn't always just exposure to clients that I was looking for. I was looking to network with other producers because, again, I was learning on my own. I was helping my clients create a podcast. And then I was as they faced problems and I solved them, I became more experienced. But 4 years of doing this yourself is one thing. And then finding other people who are also solving these problems and maybe they know 2 things more than you do. Networking with them helps you learn those things faster. So part of me just wanted that experience, and I got that galore in 2020 because all of these festivals went online, and I would stay up till 3-4 a.m. just to attend these festivals because, well, when else am I going to get access? Because honestly, in 2022, they're already planning on doing in-person. They still have a virtual aspect, but it's still I was in the perfect zone to attend those conferences exactly when they went online. And I understand that maybe in the next year or the year after that, it won't immediately be possible. But eventually, hey, I'm looking forward to actually flying in there and attending them in person now.
Well, we hope someday you'd be invited there as a guest and not just an attendee there. Good luck with that. You have the potential. We know you can do it. Absolutely. All right. So we're gonna talk about how rare is the production industry for women, because as long as as long as women are concerned, we normally see them as the face of the brands, but we don't hear often about them wearing a lot of hats, handling the production, doing the editing work. Have you had any problems of sorts, or uh, maybe stereotyped, or some chauvinist coming in your way, or something like that you found disturbing?
So there have been a few interactions with discovery calls with clients who, shall we say, were not very appreciative of how much work goes into production.
Right.
And there is also there is a tone of there is a patronizing tone that people can sometimes take when they don't think your work is really hard, especially because, hey, you're a girl doing this, out of your home. Like, how much are you actually working? Especially when they would look at my charges and they would be like, is it like, aren't you overpriced? Yours, or most importantly, more than gender. I think gender was definitely like a huge play, but like this kind of made it worse. They were like, well, you're based out of India. Should you really be charging that much? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Given the softwares I'm using, the hardware I'm using, the level of my experience and the clients I've worked with, yes, I'm going to be charging exactly what my international peers are charging. Thank you very much. If you can't afford me, well,
you don't get my services. And this is a great advice that Paroma has for us friends. You don't charge based on the competition that you have. You charged for either the output that you're providing to them or the inputs that you're putting in. It's for the efforts that you're putting. And it comes with years and years of knowledge and hard work out there. So don't hesitate. And there's another great advice that Paroma has given us, that it's not the gender, okay? Being a woman or being a lady is not going to stop you for doing any kind of work that you want, be it just editing or being in front of the camera and doing a podcast yourself.
Exactly, as Harshanki is proving right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. And where do you see Dramas Over Flowers going in 5 years from now? How big do you want it to be?
So here's the thing. I don't know. I guess it really depends on how big the drama fandom is going to be. I am in a unique position as a podcaster because this is not like, while I it's my baby. Right. I also share the ownership of the podcast with two of my co-hosts who were like, we were friends, we started it together. And at this point, if even one of us decides to, like, if this is too much work and we can't do it anymore, we will have to end the podcast, because the way we have created our dynamic is really dependent on that. So this is something that we talk about a lot. Like, can we sustain this for 5 more years? Because it takes a lot of work. Each of our episode is like 2 hours long, and like the planning of it, the production, if we have a guest on, everything takes like so much time, and it's basically like full-time work. Now we have sponsorship, and also we have like amazing support from our patrons on Patreon, and that is really, really helpful. We didn't have any of that stuff when we started off, but even as we are growing right now, we are also like, our workload is growing when it comes to the podcast. So again, it's an ongoing conversation, something that if you guys have your own podcast, you'll have to figure out too. As the podcast grows, your obligation grows, the amount of work grows, and at some point you'll have to figure out yourself, where do you want to take it? Is it possible to like expand it? But yeah, I mean, we are hopeful that if we can stick to the current trajectory, we're going to see a lot more number one spots, and outside India too, because hey, we are in the top 10s in a lot of countries. So, there are a lot of number ones still waiting to happen.
No doubt about that. We're going to see a lot of exciting merch coming out hopefully soon.
We have some plans, yes.
Awesome. All the best for that. This has been lovely. But before ending this interview, do you have any advice that you'd like to give to, say, Gen Z women or the upcoming women who want to start a career in podcasting, production, anything for that matter?
I do. This was the digression that I was going to go off to. So thank you for that question. My main my main advice would be make yourself heard and be present in as many relevant spaces as you can. And I say relevant spaces, make sure that your the client that you want to work with or the audience that you want is actually present on those platforms, and then go there and make yourself busy. Like, talk about the stuff that you love, talk about it loudly, don't be afraid, don't second guess yourself and wonder, hey, do I know enough to talk about this thing? You know enough. Hey, do you know one thing more than the other person does? Then your voice matters. Just make yourself heard, because the more you speak out clearly, well, your personality shows. That's number one. And number two is you're building authority. And authority isn't built overnight. It's built over months and years of speaking about something, learning about it, communicating with other people on the platform about it. It's something that builds over time. So yeah, don't just sit in the background and wonder why no one's finding me and why I can't find the work of my dream. You have to push yourself forward. And I know it's scary. I'm an introvert. I understand it's scary, but please do it.
Yeah, just do it, guys. Just freaking start doing it. The world is out there waiting for you. You have to find the right people. You know what amazes me a little these days, and this is a little out of the discussion that we're going in, that people these days put in more effort on finding the right partners across dating apps. But when it comes to putting the same amount of efforts across LinkedIn or Instagram or any other relevant space where they can find their dream clients, that is where the problem and a lot of procrastination comes up in. Guys, get your act together. Please start working if you want to see yourself growing and, moving forward in a certain direction.
Exactly. Your digital presence matters now more than ever before. There was a time where you could come out of school and college and be like, hey, here's my marks, now give me a job. That doesn't work anymore. It's going to be less and less relevant as you go forward. Nobody asks me about my college degree. I promise you, not a single client cares that I just did my bachelor's in economics. Nobody cares. They only care about my portfolio, who I've worked with before, and what kind of service I'm providing right now. And do I have the knowledge that I want to share with them? So, yeah.
Absolutely. See, guys, this is a great advice to learn something from. Please learn your lesson. Let's start today. And if you need any kind of help, hey, it's okay. Just drop us a message and we'll be more than happy to help you. With that, we'd like to end our episode. I hope you've liked Women in Tech and Paroma. Paroma, you have been delightful on the episode today, and we hope we can stay connected in future.
Absolutely.
Please to connect with Paroma on Instagram and LinkedIn. I've added her IDs in the description. Do follow her, send her any queries that you have, and she'd be more than happy to help. You know where to find us. You can connect with us on our social media channels. We're available as iGeeks on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you want to connect with me, you can just hit me up on Instagram. I'm available as Harshanki with an extra I. I'm going to see you next week with more exciting content, probably some Apple rumors, some conspiracy theories, or who knows, we might be discussing the tech part. Till then, stay safe, stay connected, and wish you all a very happy new year.